Hello and welcome to OffBlueMedical. Today I will be giving you clusters of notes that are very high yield for the USMLE. So to get started with the first cluster of notes, the first point is that breastfeeding is protective against childhood cancers. And this is very important. So breastfeeding has a lot of benefits, and exclusive breastfeeding for at least 6 months is very important, and that should be recommended for the USMLE because it's going to be decreasing the risk of childhood cancers such as ALL, which is acute lymphoblastic leukemia, and also decreases the rate of childhood food allergies. Another point is that whole cow's milk feeding before 1 year of age is a strong risk factor for developing particularly iron deficiency anemia. So when there's a child who's less than 1 years of age, you don't give them whole cow's milk. You wait until they reach 1 year of age. And there's an important point also for the SMLE, especially for step 2 CK, where if the child reaches 1 year of age, it is very important and sometimes it's recommended to screen them for iron deficiency anemia because sometimes they might have iron deficiency that is not apparent. So sometimes we screen them at 1 year of age. Another point is that ACE inhibitor use, such as lisinopril, during pregnancy is very dangerous. It's highly teratogenic. So it's going to cause kidney problems. It's going to cause fetal kidney injury and severe oligohydramnios. Pregnancy is a period of increased vulnerability to intimate partner violence, and this is very important. It's overlooked. So, particularly in cases of unintended pregnancies. So, when a pregnant woman comes, you have to make sure that they are not being subject to intimate partner violence. And this is very important, especially in psychiatry. Solid organ transplantation with chronic immunosuppression is a strong risk factor for skin cancer, particularly in cases of squamous cell carcinoma. The second cluster is with drugs. So, digoxin toxicity can present as second degree Mobitz type 1 AV block. So, for the USMLE, if you see a second degree Mobitz type 2 AV block, then it's never going to be digoxin toxicity because digoxin toxicity for the USMLE is going to present as second degree Mobitz type 1, not type 2 AV block. And tricyclic antidepressants such as amitriptyline toxicity can present as white QRS complex tachycardia and anticholinergic toxicity, such as hyperthermia, mydriasis, and urinary retention. While doxorubicin, which is anthracycline toxicity, can present, and this is very important, as dilated cardiomyopathy, and it's typically irreversible, and also decompensated decongestive heart failure. And cocaine intoxication can present as coronary artery vasospasm, so it can cause MIs with new ST segment elevations or depressions on ECG. For cocaine intoxication, we don't give beta blockers because we don't want uninhibited alpha receptors working and you get very high blood pressure that's going to worsen it, so we don't use beta blockers. It's important that we use benzodiazepines in this case. And typical antipsychotic toxicity such as haloperidol toxicity can present as either acute dystonic reactions such as oculogyric crisis, torticollis, opisthotonus, or neuroleptic malignant syndrome. So basically you'll have severe muscle rigidity and hyperthermia, so fever and muscle rigidity that's severe. We're going to treat that with benzodiazepines, so we want to cool the system down, and we also give dantrolene. The third cluster of notes, we have 4 notes. So the first one is telogene effluvium occurs due to stress. Okay, and you may have known this or you may have read this, but you have to also know that anagene effluvium occurs due to chemotherapy. So telogene effluvium, you're going to get a woman who is maybe in her 20s, 30s, that has hair loss, okay, widespread hair loss. And what you're going to do is you're going to reassure the patient that it's going to grow back. Maybe it's due to stress. She's experiencing some type of life-changing event and she has hair fall. So that's telogene effluvium. due to stress. Anerugine effluvium is due to chemotherapy. Okay, and anerugine effluvium is more severe. Epidural hematoma occurs due to injury to the MMA, which is the middle meningeal artery, often from severe skull trauma, and it's most often it's fatal. And subdural hematoma occurs due to shearing or tearing of the bridging cortical veins, often from minor trauma and the setting of cerebral atrophy. So in old aged people, they hit their head and they get subdural hematoma, or in alcoholics or people who take blood thinners. Also, factitious disorder occurs due to an unconscious psychological desire to assume the sick role and to be cared for. So this is called primary gain. This is factitious disorder, while malingering is faking it to get something. So, such as a patient coming in, they want time off from their work, so they fake being sick. So this is called secondary gain. So it occurs due to conscious desire to obtain external tangible rewards, such as avoiding work or obtaining disability payments. And there's also an important point that you can differentiate factitious disorder from malingering. So in factitious disorder, they assume they are sick for primary gain, so they are willing to go major surgeries and investigations and endoscopy and all of these procedures. But malingering, they just want time off or they want disability payments. So they don't really want to risk themselves getting hurt with surgery. So if you tell them, okay, let's do surgery or let's do endoscopy, then they're going to refuse because they don't want the pain of that. They just want the secondary gain. Also, gastric ulcer pain worsens with eating food, while duodenal ulcer pain is going to get better with eating food. So it worsens with the lack of food and it often improves with eating. Non-dominant frontal lobe lesions can affect how a patient conveys emotion through speech. This is called motor aprosodia, while non-dominant, and you have to know both of these are non-dominant. Non-dominant temporal lobe lesions can affect how a patient comprehends emotional gestures, and this is called sensory aprosodia. The fifth note is regarding posterior shoulder dislocation. So anterior shoulder dislocation can happen due to falls, okay, maybe on an outstretched hand. Posterior shoulder dislocation is more rare. It's typically caused by violent muscle contractions, such as a patient with epilepsy experiencing a seizure or a patient getting electrocuted by the police or something. So the clinical presentation is you're going to get an arm that's locked in adduction and internal rotation. You're going to see visible flattening of the anterior shoulder, and if you do radiography, if you take an x-ray, you're going to see disruption of the normal glenohumeral relationship, and you're also going to see the light bulb sign. So you'll basically see a circle that's presenting the humeral head. It's going to be circular, as I said, due to internal rotation. And the management is via closed reduction. The sixth note is regarding breast abscess, and what's very important is its risk factors, which is maternal age over 30, first pregnancy, and tobacco use. So you might know that breast abscess presents as a feverish, and you're going to get a female with fever and a fluctuant tender mass. And this is very important, a fluctuant tender mass. The diagnosis is via ultrasound, and the treatment is drainage and antibiotics, but you might not know the risk factors. So you have to know these: the maternal age over 30, okay, and the first pregnancy and tobacco use. These are very important. The other note is regarding risk factors and prognostic factors. So the most important prognostic factor for breast cancer is TNM. Not if the breast cancer is ER positive or HR positive or anything, it's the TNM. It's the staging. The most important risk factor for endometrial cancer is very important, and this is chronic anovulation, such as in cases of PCOS or obesity or other causes. The strongest modifiable risk factor for strokes is hypertension, while the strongest non-modifiable risk factor for strokes is increased age. And in aspiration pneumonia, the strongest predictor of complications is the volume of the aspirated fluid, while advancing age is the strongest risk factor for Alzheimer's dementia. And also, there's an important note that Alzheimer's dementia, females are more susceptible to it than males. But why? Is it due to genetics? No, because females live longer than males, and advancing age is a risk factor for this disease, so females are going to have Alzheimer's dementia more than males. Major modifiable risk factor for suicide is excessive alcohol use. So a previous attempt is the most important one, but also excessive alcohol use is another very important risk factor. And the great cause of mortality in teens and young adults is accidental death, then you get suicide and then homicide after that. The eighth note is regarding Kawasaki disease. So in Kawasaki disease, they are susceptible to developing aneurysms and also congestive heart failure. But the risk for developing aneurysms is very high in infants and in those with delayed treatment and those with prolonged fever. Hypothyroidism and liver disease can cause macrocytosis. So as you know, macrocytosis is an MCV more than 100. Okay, where do you see that? You see that in B12 deficiency, okay, B9 deficiency, that's folic acid deficiency as well. But you may also see it in hypothyroidism. You might see it in liver disease. You might also see it in reticulocytosis. But these are very important diseases that cause macrocytosis that people sometimes miss. The last note is that maternal NSAID use and aminoglycosides can lead to neonatal acute kidney injury. And these are the clusters of notes for the USMLE.